Imagine walking into your house after a long trip, only to find your 9-year-old daughter alone, scrubbing the kitchen floor while everyone else is out having fun. This shocking moment turned my entire world upside down, and it all started with a painful family secret. If you're into Reddit relationship stories that leave you questioning everything, this one's for you. Hit that subscribe button, like the video, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know what you think. The growing tension and emotional conflict. I've always prided myself on being calm, collected, and above all, in control. It's how I handled my work, how I handled life, and most importantly, how I handled my family. At 35, I had built a life that was organized, predictable, a routine that gave me peace of mind. I worked in insurance, a field where emotions were kept at bay, where everything was sorted, clean, and logical. But nothing in my experience could have prepared me for the moment that shattered my carefully constructed world. My name's Emma, and I'm about to tell you a story that turned my life upside down, one decision at a time. It all started when I met Brendan. He wasn't the fairytale kind of guy I thought I wanted, but he was stable, at least that's what I told myself. He came with baggage, though. His 11-year-old daughter, Amanda, was living with us full-time. Her mother, well, let's just say she had vanished long before the divorce was even final. And there was Evelyn, my sweet little girl, just 9 years old at the time, obsessed with ponies and always asking questions that made me laugh. She was so full of life, of curiosity. I loved her like nothing else. But when we moved in with Brendan's parents, that's when things started to unravel. Brendan's parents lived in a quiet, well-kept house in the suburbs. It seemed like the perfect place to weather the storm. They offered us a place to stay after Brendan lost his job. We were struggling, and I couldn't afford to rent alone. So we moved in with them, hoping it would only be temporary. That was 3 years ago. It wasn't long before I began to feel suffocated. His mom, a woman I could barely tolerate, started to make her little passive-aggressive comments. Sweetheart, she'd call me, but it always sounded like an insult. I tried to ignore it. I thought to myself, this is temporary. This will pass. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. My daughter wasn't happy. I saw it in the way she barely smiled anymore, how she shrank into herself, how she stopped singing her silly little songs in the mornings. Brendan didn't notice. He never did. He was too busy trying to find work. And when he wasn't, he was too busy trying to keep the peace. But I wasn't blind. I saw how Evelyn was treated like a guest in her own home, never truly part of the family. And then came the day I'll never forget. I was on a work trip, a 4-day stint in St. Louis, but something in my gut told me to come home early. I thought I could surprise the girls, grab some pizza, throw on a movie, maybe even build a blanket fort in the living room. I wanted to be the mom that made everything better. But what I walked into... It wasn't what I expected, though. House was silent. To silent, it felt wrong, like something was off. I called out, but there was no answer, and then I found Evelyn on her knees, scrubbing the kitchen floor. She looked up at me, her little face devoid of emotion, like this was just a normal part of her routine. Where is everyone? I asked, my heart racing. They went to the park. I'm grounded, she said flatly, as though it didn't bother her at all. And that's when I felt the full weight of it. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was deliberate. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't just a one-off punishment. They had been treating her like this for months. Maybe longer. They had taken their real granddaughter out to the amusement park, leaving Evelyn behind to scrub floors in the quiet of the house. My daughter, at just 9 years old, was left alone to be punished in the name of discipline. I could feel my blood boiling, but I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't give them the satisfaction of a breakdown. Instead, I packed our things, grabbed the important documents, wrote a note and left it on the counter. You left a child home alone, called it punishment, and took your real granddaughter to have fun. My daughter isn't spending another night in this house, ever. That night, we drove to a motel. I ordered pizza, turned on cartoons, and let Evelyn eat an entire tub of ice cream. I didn't say much. I just held her. We were safe. And that was all that mattered. But that wasn't the end. By morning, My phone was ringing off the hook. Brendan, his voice was frantic on the other end, filled with guilt and confusion. Emma, where are you? I'm so sorry. It was a misunderstanding, he pleaded. A misunderstanding. I asked, my voice low, calm, but cutting. A misunderstanding is missing a sock. This was deliberate. Brendan, you left your daughter alone, too. Scrub floors, while you went off and had fun. Tell me again how this is a misunderstanding. There was silence. I wasn't going to listen to his excuses anymore. It wasn't just his mother, it was him, too. He was complicit in this. And I wasn't going to let them destroy my daughter's spirit any longer. I ignored the calls. I ignored his mother's voicemail, her message of fake apologies and concern. I didn't need to hear any more of their lies. I had already done what needed to be done. It wasn't easy. I didn't sleep. 4 days, constantly replaying that image of my daughter on her knees, alone in that kitchen. But I couldn't let it go. I couldn't let them break her anymore. The next few days were filled with chaos. Brendan showed up at the motel, flowers in hand, his face desperate. Please, Emma, we need to talk. This has gone too far, he begged, but I wasn't listening anymore. Because I knew deep down that this wasn't about love. It wasn't about family, it was manipulation. It was control, and I was done. The perspective of Brendan, the silent observer of a family falling apart. Brendan stood in the doorway, his hands trembling, holding a bouquet of flowers that seemed out of place. He had no idea what to say. He'd never felt so completely helpless in his life. He wasn't a bad person. He never wanted to hurt anyone, especially not his daughter, Evelyn. But sometimes, life has a way of spiraling out of control. And somehow, he had let it all slip away. He remembered when he first met Emma, she was everything he wasn't: organized, composed, and calm under pressure. She made everything seem so easy. When their lives collided, Brendan had hoped to build something stable, something good for his daughters. At first, it had worked. But now, standing here at the threshold of a shattered home, he couldn't shake the guilt gnawing at his insides. Brendan had tried. He really had. He had tried to be the provider, the protector, the man who held everything together. But when his job had disappeared, when the stability they once had slipped through his fingers like sand, he had no idea how to stop the fall. That's when his parents stepped in, offering a place to stay, a temporary solution to their mounting financial troubles. He'd never wanted to ask for help, never wanted to admit defeat. But what choice did he have? Moving back in with his parents felt like the last option. At first, it seemed like a lifeline. They didn't have to worry about paying rent. Brendan could focus on finding a job, and Emma could keep working her steady job. But the moment they walked into that house, things started changing. It wasn't just the cluttered, old house with creaky floorboards and the smell of mothballs in the air. It was the silent tension that hung in the air. His mother, who had never truly welcomed Emma into the fold, was like a constant presence in their lives, hovering over every conversation, making her passive-aggressive remarks disguised as kindness. Brendan wasn't blind to the tension. He could see how uncomfortable Emma was in his parents' home. He knew how his mother's cold demeanor affected her, how she would smile tightly at dinner, how she tried to keep the peace while inwardly she was withering. And Evelyn had become quieter, withdrawn. He noticed it in the way she stopped asking her usual questions, in the way she no longer came running into his arms after a long day of work. But he brushed it off. What could he do? He was doing his best to keep his head above water. The real problem, Brendan realized too late, was that he had lost control of the situation long before it spiraled out of hand. He had allowed his parents to step in too much. He had allowed them to make decisions for his family, decisions that, in hindsight, were not theirs to make. And the worst part was that he hadn't noticed how deep the cracks had grown. It wasn't just his mom's treatment of Evelyn, though that was certainly part of it. It was his own inaction. He hadn't seen what his daughter was going through. He hadn't recognized how Emma was silently breaking inside, holding everything together, while he let his parents' influence slowly take over. And now he had lost everything. He had been too passive, too willing to let Emma take charge, too eager to let his parents offer their help. His mother had always made sure to keep Amanda, her real granddaughter, at the center of everything. Amanda got her own room, her own space. Evelyn, on the other hand, had to make do with whatever scraps were left. When Evelyn was made to share a room with Amanda, it wasn't just a logistical decision, it was a sign. A sign that Evelyn didn't belong. Brendan remembered the birthday party. Amanda had received gifts, cake, attention. Evelyn had been pushed to the side, told to stay out of the way. He tried to tell himself it was just a misunderstanding, that his mom didn't mean to hurt her. But deep down, he knew better. That night, when Evelyn was left alone, scrubbing the kitchen floor, it was the breaking point. He had been out at Six Flags, enjoying a day with his parents, watching his mom spoil Amanda. He hadn't thought twice about Evelyn being left behind. After all, she wasn't the real granddaughter. She wasn't the one who mattered in his parents' eyes. When Emma came home and found Evelyn alone, his world tilted. He could see the pain in her eyes, the hurt that cut deeper than anything he had ever experienced. Emma's reaction was the one he hadn't expected. She didn't scream, didn't throw things. She simply packed up and left. There was no begging, no bargaining. She was done. But he wasn't ready for it. He wasn't ready to face what he had let happen. And as he stood at the motel door, holding those flowers, he realized he wasn't the hero in this story. He wasn't the protector. He wasn't the one who saved the day. Emma was. He could have fixed it. He should have fixed it. He should have stepped up sooner. Should have protected Evelyn from his mother's cold indifference. Should have protected Emma from the emotional weight she was carrying all on her own. But he didn't. And now, standing at the threshold, he understood that his inaction had cost him everything. "Emma, please. Let's talk," he said, his voice trembling. "I can fix this. I'll do better. We can make this work." But Emma wasn't having it. "It's too late," she said, her voice steady but firm. "You let them break her, Brendan. You didn't protect your daughter. You didn't protect me." And that was the hardest thing for Brendan to hear. Because deep down, he knew she was right. He had failed them both. The climax, the point of no return motel room was small, but it felt like a safe haven. The walls were thin, but there was a comforting silence that enveloped Emma and Evelyn as they sat side by side on the bed. Emma didn't say much. But she didn't need to. She could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on her. But it was the first time in a long while that she wasn't afraid. For the first time, she wasn't walking on eggshells. She wasn't pretending that everything would be okay. Evelyn, on the other hand, seemed both fragile and strong. Her face was still blotchy from crying, but she had stopped. The quiet between them was filled with the steady hum of the air conditioner and the sound of distant traffic. Emma's heart ached as she watched her daughter slowly drift into a peaceful sleep, exhaustion finally taking its toll. She had never seen Evelyn so still, so vulnerable, and for the first time, Emma allowed herself to truly feel the depth of the pain that had been building up in her over the past months, even years. This wasn't just about a broken family. This wasn't just about a disagreement or a fight. This was about survival. This was about protecting her daughter from a world that had slowly chipped away at her sense of worth, at her place in her own family. Evelyn had been ignored, rejected, and treated like an outsider for far too long. And Emma had been blind to it until that night, when she walked in to find her daughter alone, scrubbing the kitchen floor while everyone else went to the amusement park. Brendan had never seen it. He had never really understood the impact of his family's actions, the slow erosion of Evelyn's spirit. But Emma had felt it every day, every time she watched her daughter shrink further into herself. Every time she saw the sparkle in Evelyn's eyes dim just a little more. And now, as she sat there in that motel room, Emma was faced with a decision that would shape the rest of her life. She could go back to Brendan. She could try to fix things. She could swallow the pain and pretend it wasn't happening, pretend that somehow everything would go back to normal, or she could leave. She could walk away from the past, from the people who had betrayed her and her daughter, and build a new life, a life where they were safe, where they were loved, where they were free. The phone rang again, the familiar ringtone of Brendan's name flashing on the screen. Emma hesitated before swiping the screen to answer. She knew what he would say, what he always said. "Emma, please, Let's talk. We can fix this. I'm sorry. I don't want to lose you. But Emma didn't want his apologies anymore. She didn't want the empty promises. She didn't want the lies. She didn't want to hear about how things were going to change. Because in her heart, she knew they wouldn't. They never did. And Evelyn deserved more than that. Please, Emma, just listen to me. Brendan's voice crackled through the speaker. I'm doing everything I can. I'll fix this. I'll talk to my mom. I'll make her understand. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. Emma closed her eyes, her hand tightening around the phone. Her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Part of her wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that things could be fixed, that they could go back to the way they were, when their lives were simpler, when they had hope. But she knew better now. She had seen the truth. She had seen how his family had treated Evelyn, how they had made her feel invisible, how they had made her feel like she didn't belong. I can't keep doing this, Brendan, Emma said, her voice calm but resolute. I can't keep pretending that things are okay when they're not. I've tried to make this work. I've tried to make it work for Evelyn. But I can't do it anymore. You can't fix this. You can't fix what's been broken. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment, Emma thought he might hang up. But he didn't. Instead, his voice came through, quieter this time. I never wanted to hurt you, Emma. I never wanted to hurt Evelyn. I love you both. Emma felt a pang in her chest, but she pushed it aside. I know you love us, Brendan. But love isn't enough. Not anymore. Love isn't enough when you let your daughter be treated like that. Love isn't enough when you stand by and let your family hurt the people you love most. I can't keep living in this toxic environment. I can't keep pretending everything is fine when it's not. She heard him sigh, a sound of defeat. So, what are you going to do? Emma didn't hesitate. I'm leaving. I'm taking Evelyn, and we're not coming back. This is the end. The words were final, a heavy weight that dropped between them. Emma could hear Brendan's breathing on the other end of the line, the faint sound of disbelief mixed with guilt. But it didn't matter anymore. It didn't matter how much he begged, how much he apologized. He had lost her. He had lost them. Both. She ended the call before he could say anything more. The decision had been made. It was over. The next few hours were a blur. Emma gathered their things, packed what little they had, and checked out of the motel. She didn't look back. Evelyn was still asleep, but Emma knew she couldn't keep this secret from her anymore. She had to tell her the truth. She had to explain why they were leaving, why they couldn't go back. When Evelyn woke up, Emma was sitting at the small table, her hands resting on her lap. Evelyn rubbed her eyes and sat up slowly, still groggy from sleep. Mom, she asked softly, where are we going? Emma smiled gently, her heart heavy with the weight of her decision. We're going to start over, sweetie. We're going to make a new life. Just you and me. And we're going to be happy. We're going to be safe. Evelyn didn't say anything at first. She just looked at Emma, her wide eyes searching her face for answers. And then, as if a weight had been lifted, she smiled a small, tentative smile that made Emma's heart swell. Are we going to be okay? Evelyn asked, her voice trembling slightly. We are, Emma said, her voice steady. We're going to be more than okay. We're going to be better than we've ever been. I promise. And with that, Emma knew she had made the right choice. No more compromises. No more living in fear. It was just the two of them now, and together, they would rebuild their lives. Together, they would be free. The next morning, as they drove away, Emma felt the weight of the past lift off her shoulders. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful. She didn't need Brendan. She didn't need his family. She only needed Evelyn, and that was enough. The conclusion and the lesson learned they road stretched ahead, long and empty. But in that silence, Emma finally felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. She glanced at Evelyn, who was curled up in the seat next to her, her eyes heavy with sleep but her expression calm. For the first time in months, Emma felt like they were truly free from the judgment, the expectations, and the emotional manipulation that had held them captive for so long. The decision to leave had been the hardest thing Emma had ever done, leaving Brendan, leaving his family, leaving everything she had worked so hard for. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, moments when she questioned whether she had done the right thing. But when she looked at Evelyn, when she saw the peaceful expression on her daughter's face, as she slept beside her, Emma knew that this was the only choice she could have made. Evelyn needed her, and Emma needed to protect her, to show her that she was worthy of love and respect no matter what anyone else had said or done. As they drove away from the past, Emma made a promise to herself and to Evelyn. They would rebuild. Together, they would create a life where Evelyn could flourish, where she would never again feel like an outsider in her own family. Emma wasn't sure exactly how they would do it, but she knew they would figure it out, and they would do it without fear, without the weight of someone else's toxic expectations. They would do it on their own terms. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, Emma wasn't afraid. She didn't need anyone else's approval. She didn't need to appease anyone else. All she needed was Evelyn, and in that moment, she knew that was more than enough. They found a small apartment in a quiet part of town, a place that felt like home the minute they walked in. Evelyn was able to decorate her own room, to fill it with the things that made her happy: a pony, blanket, stickers on her closet, art on the walls. For the first time, she felt like she belonged. And for Emma, watching her daughter smile again, watching her light up in a way she hadn't in months, made every sacrifice worth it. There were no more late night phone calls from Brendan, no more trying to explain herself to his family. Emma had done the hard work, the work of walking away, of standing up for herself and her daughter. She had created a space for them to heal, to breathe, and to finally live without the weight of guilt and shame. And then, just as she was starting to feel like they had reached a new beginning, there came the reminder that healing was a process, one that took time, but one that would be worth it. Brendan reached out. His voice, this time, was different. It was quieter, not full of excuses, but of genuine remorse. "I've realized how much I failed you, Emma," he said. "I'm sorry for everything. I should have protected Evelyn. I should have protected you, but I couldn't see it then." Emma paused, feeling the heaviness of the words. She wanted to respond, wanted to scream and yell about all the ways he had let her down. But instead, she simply said, "It's too late for apologies. Brendan, I've already moved on. I've already taken the steps to make sure Evelyn and I are okay. You had your chance, and that was all she needed to say." She had done what was necessary for her daughter, and now it was time to move forward, no more. Looking back, the lesson learned, Emma learned down the lesson that we all need to learn is that we have the power to change our circumstances. We don't need to stay trapped in toxic relationships or environments simply because we feel obligated to. We don't need to sacrifice our well-being, or the well-being of our loved ones, to meet other people's expectations. We can walk away. We can stand up for ourselves, even when it seems impossible. We can choose to protect our happiness, to protect our peace, and to create the life we deserve. Emma's journey was not easy, and it wasn't without its struggles, but she proved that when you take control of your own life, when you make the hard choices for the sake of your happiness and the happiness of those you love, you can rebuild. The road may be long, and the healing may take time, but it is always worth it. No one else can define your worth. Only you can do that. And the moment you realize that, the moment you choose to protect your own peace and happiness, is the moment everything changes. Call to action: if you've ever found yourself stuck in a situation that drained your energy, your happiness, or your sense of self-worth, remember, you have the power to change. Don't let anyone make you feel like you don't deserve better. Stand up for yourself, protect your peace, and never be afraid to walk away from toxic situations. If you've found this story relatable, if it's spoken to your heart, leave a comment below. Let me know how you've overcome your own struggles, or how you've learned to protect your happiness. Don't forget to hit that like button if you believe in the power of walking away and taking control of your own life. And make sure you subscribe to the channel for more stories about strength, resilience, and the courage to stand up for yourself and those you love. Remember, you are worth it.